The wagon train had been crossing the Arizona desert for 6 weeks when the fever came. It swept through the travelers like wildfire, taking the weak and the old first. Emma Hartwell was neither weak nor old, but the fever didn't care about her strength of spirit. It cared only about the fact that she was 23 years old and entirely alone except for a family that had already decided she wasn't worth saving. She'd been born with a twisted left leg, a birth defect that had marked her as different from childhood. In Boston society, she'd been a curiosity, beautiful enough to be worth looking at, but too flawed to be worth marrying. Her parents had brought her west hoping that the frontier would be less judgmental. Instead, they'd found a place where physical limitations meant death. When Emma developed a fever, her father had wanted to leave her behind at a settlement 50 miles back. Her mother had wanted to give her laudanum and let her die quietly in the wagon. It was her younger brother who convinced them to keep her alive for one more day, and then another, and then another. But by the time the fever broke, the family's patience had broken too. "She'll slow us down," her father said coldly, looking at Emma with a detachment one might reserve for livestock. "Her leg is useless. She's useless. We leave her at the next settlement." "Father, please," Emma whispered, her voice still raw from the fever. "We've already lost 2 oxen and supplies keeping you alive," he said. "We're not losing the whole family because of one cripple." Her mother packed Emma's few belongings into a small bag. They left her at a way station, a dilapidated shelter with a water well and enough supplies for maybe a week. No one said goodbye. No one looked back. Emma sat in that shelter for 2 days, watching the desert stretch endlessly around her, understanding that she was going to die here. The leg that had marked her as unsuitable for society now marked her as unsuitable for survival. She couldn't walk far enough to reach help. She couldn't ride a horse with her twisted leg. She was trapped in a landscape that offered no mercy to the weak. On the 3rd day, when she begun to accept the reality of her death, she heard the sound of hoofbeats. The man who rode into the settlement was maybe 35, with the kind of weathered face that suggested a life lived under the sun. He was wearing the clothes of a working cowboy, dust-covered denim, worn leather, a hat that had seen better days. His name, he told her simply, was Samuel. He didn't ask many questions. He saw her condition, assessed the situation quickly, and came to a conclusion. "You're coming with me," he said. "I can't ride," Emma said, her voice hollow with despair. "Then I'll carry you," Samuel replied. He began gathering her belongings with economical movements, preparing his horse, taking inventory of the supplies available at the station. "You don't understand," Emma said. "My family left me here because I'm useless. I'm crippled. I'll only slow you down, and you'll end up hating me like they do." Samuel stopped what he was doing and looked at her directly. "I'm not your family, and I don't abandon people." He fashioned a kind of sling from rope and cloth, creating a way to carry her securely on the horse in front of him. It was awkward and uncomfortable, but it worked. He kept one arm around her while he guided the horse, moving slowly across the desert toward the nearest town. The journey that would have taken a healthy person 2 days took them 4, but Samuel never complained. He spoke to her softly about the landscape, about the stars, about things that had nothing to do with her uselessness, and everything to do with treating her like a human being. "Tell me about yourself," he said on the 2nd night, when they'd made camp and he was carefully helping her down from a horse. "Why?" Emma asked, "So you can understand how little there is to me?" "No," Samuel said, "because I want to know who you are. Not what you can't do, who you are." So Emma told him. She told him about her love of books, about the poetry she'd memorized, about her dreams of traveling to England and seeing the places she'd read about. She told him about the shame of never fitting in, about the quiet way her family had treated her as a burden. Samuel listened like every word mattered, like her thoughts and feelings were precious. "You're one of the most interesting people I've ever met," he said finally, "and your leg has nothing to do with that." Over the following days, something shifted. Emma stopped seeing herself through her family's eyes and started seeing herself through Samuel's. He didn't focus on what she couldn't do. He focused on who she was. He laughed at her observations. He debated philosophy with her. He treated her like a partner, not a burden. When they reached the town of Redemption, a place that specialized in taking in strays and misfits, Samuel found her a room and a doctor. The doctor confirmed what Emma already knew. Her leg would never be straight, but it could be strengthened. With time and therapy, she could walk a cane, could have some independence. Will you stay? Samuel asked her one evening, after the doctor had left. I thought you were leaving, Emma said. Isn't that what cowboys do? Move on. Samuel said, until I met someone worth staying for. He rented a small house on the edge of town. Over the following months, as Emma's leg grew stronger and she learned to navigate the world with a cane, Samuel was always there, not pushing her, not pitying her, just present. He built her a reading chair with good light. He brought her books from the traveling library. He taught her to ride a horse in a way that worked with her body instead of against it. One evening, when Emma could walk almost normally with her cane, Samuel asked her to marry him, not because he felt obligated, not because he pitied her, but because he loved her. How? Emma asked, how can you love someone who will always be limited, who will always struggle? The same way you love despite being told you're not worth loving, Samuel said. By understanding that limitations don't define worth, by seeing the person, not the disability. They married quietly in the town's small church. The ceremony was attended by the other misfits and castaways who populated Redemption. People understood here what Emma was finally learning. That everyone carried their wounds. Everyone had been rejected by someone. Everyone had a reason to believe they weren't good enough. And yet they survived. They thrived. They loved. 10 years later, Emma Hartwell, now Emma Blackwood, Samuel's wife, sat on the porch of their house, watching the desert sunset. She'd written 3 books of poetry that had been published in Boston and Denver. She'd become known as the poet of the frontier, the woman whose words captured the loneliness and beauty of the landscape. She'd become someone. Samuel came out with 2 cups of coffee and sat beside her, taking her hand like he'd done every evening for a decade. Do you ever regret it? Emma asked, picking up a crippled girl at a way station instead of continuing on. Never, Samuel said. That was the best decision I ever made. You were never the burden, Emma. You were always a treasure. My family would be shocked, Emma said. They left me to die, and instead I got a life. More than that, Samuel said. You got a choice. You got to decide who you were, instead of having that decided for you. Their children, 3 of them, all healthy, all strong, would grow up hearing the story of how their mother had been left behind in the desert and their father had carried her to safety. But more importantly, they would grow up understanding that disability wasn't shame, that being different didn't mean being unworthy, that love was something you chose every day when you woke up and decided that the other person mattered. Emma lived to 78, spent her final years surrounded by grandchildren and her published works. When she died, peacefully, with Samuel's hand in hers, the town of Redemption closed for her funeral. People came from across the territory to pay their respects to the poet who taught them that broken things could become beautiful, that the people society cast away were often the ones with the most to offer. Samuel died 2 years later, not from any illness, but from a heart that had lost its reason to keep beating. Their gravestone, which stands to this day in Redemption Cemetery, reads simply, "He carried her through the desert. She carried him through life." And the story of the crippled girl who was left behind and the cowboy who carried her to safety became legend. Not just a love story, but a testament to what happens when someone chooses to see past the things society uses to diminish us. When someone looks at you completely, disability and all, and decides you're worth fighting for. Emma's last book of poetry, published after her death, contained a poem titled Carried. In it, she wrote about the moment she understood that being carried wasn't weakness. It was transformation. That sometimes the strongest thing we can do is accept help from someone who loves us enough to carry us through the desert until we're strong enough to carry ourselves. And Samuel, who never sought recognition, never wrote anything down, lived on in every page she wrote, in every word that spoke of being chosen, being seen, being loved completely, despite everything, because of everything, in the way that only matters